The kingdom of Hastinapur was a place of prosperity and peace. Ruled by the wise and just King Shantanu, it flourished on the banks of the sacred river Ganga. Shantanu, a descendant of the Kuru dynasty, was known for his valor and his compassion. He ruled his kingdom with a gentle hand, earning the love and respect of his people. Life in Hastinapur flowed as serenely as the Ganga itself, until the day the king ventured out on a hunting expedition. Shantanu, captivated by Ganga's beauty, proposed marriage to her. The goddess, her heart touched by the king's sincerity, agreed but on one condition: she would be his queen, but he could never question her actions, no matter how strange or unsettling they seemed. Shantanu, blinded by his love for Ganga, readily agreed to her condition. Their marriage was a grand affair celebrated throughout the kingdom. The people rejoiced, believing that their beloved king had found his perfect match. For a while, peace and happiness reigned in Hastinapur. Ganga gave birth to a series of sons, each one more handsome and strong than the last. With each child that Ganga bore, a sense of dread began to creep into Shantanu's heart. The once joyous anticipation of fatherhood was replaced by a gnawing fear that grew with each passing day. Shantanu, the mighty king, found himself powerless in the face of this recurring tragedy. Each time a child was born, he would look into the eyes of his queen, Ganga, hoping for a change, a sign of mercy. But all he saw was a profound sadness that mirrored his own. For as soon as each son was born, Ganga, with a look of unspeakable sadness, would take the infant to the river and drown it. The river, once a symbol of life and sustenance, had become a place of sorrow and loss for the king. The king, bound by his promise, watched in silent agony as his sons were taken from him. Each time he felt a piece of his heart being torn away, yet he remained silent, honoring the vow he had made to his beloved queen. He dared not question his queen, though his heart broke with every loss. The weight of his promise was heavy, and the love he had for Ganga was deep, but the pain of losing his children was unbearable. 7 times this heartbreaking ritual was repeated. 7 times Shantanu watched helplessly as his sons were swallowed by the river. Each time he hoped it would be the last, but the cycle of sorrow continued. The river, which once brought life to the kingdom, now seemed to take it away. Shantanu's nights were filled with nightmares, and his days with a haunting silence. The people of the kingdom whispered of the king's sorrow, but none dared to speak of it openly. But when Ganga prepared to drown their 8th child, the king could bear it no longer. The weight of his grief had become too much to bear. He felt a surge of desperation and love for his newborn son, stronger than any promise he had made. He broke his silence and cried out, begging her to spare their son. His voice, filled with anguish and love, echoed across the river. For the first time, he defied the promise that had bound him, choosing instead to fight for the life of his child. Ganga, hearing the desperation in Shantanu's voice, paused. The river's relentless current seemed to still for a moment, as if listening to the king's plea. The fate of their 8th child hung in the balance, as the sorrow of a mother and the love of a father clashed by the river's edge. Ganga, her eyes filled with tears, turned to Shantanu. Her heart was heavy with the weight of the truth she was about to reveal. The sorrow in her eyes was unmistakable, and Shantanu could sense that something profound was about to be disclosed. She revealed the reason behind her actions. With a deep breath, she began to recount the events that had led to this moment. Her voice was filled with a mix of regret and determination as she spoke. She explained that she was not a mere river nymph, but the goddess Ganga. Her true identity had been hidden for so long, and now, the time had come to unveil it. The transformation from a nymph to a goddess was a sight to behold, filled with divine light and celestial beauty. Her sons, she revealed, were the 8 Vasus, celestial beings who had been cursed to be born as mortals. Each of them had a story, a past filled with divine duties and celestial responsibilities. But their fate had taken a tragic turn. Their sin, she explained, was stealing the celestial cow Nandini from the sage Vashishta. This act of theft was not just a simple misdeed, it was a grave offense that disrupted the cosmic order. The cow, Nandini, was no ordinary bovine. She was a divine being with immense significance. The sage, outraged by their actions, had cursed them to live as humans, enduring the pain of separation. His anger was justified, for the Vasus had committed an act that warranted severe punishment. The curse was a reflection of the sage's deep sense of justice and his commitment to maintaining the balance of the universe. Ganga, their mother, had taken it upon herself to shorten their suffering. She could not bear to see her children endure the full extent of the curse. With a heavy heart, she decided to intervene, to ease their pain, and to bring them back to their celestial abode as quickly as possible. This eighth son, she explained, was destined to live. Unlike his brothers, his fate was intertwined with the mortal world. He had a purpose, a destiny that was yet to unfold. His life was meant to bridge the gap between the divine and the human, to bring about a change that was written in the stars. And with that, she vanished into the river, taking the infant with her. The river embraced her and she disappeared into its depths, leaving behind a legacy that would be remembered for ages. The infant cradled in her arms was destined for greatness, a symbol of hope and redemption. Shantanu, heartbroken and filled with remorse, returned to his palace. He had finally learned the reason behind his wife's actions, but at a terrible cost. Years passed, and the king was consumed by grief and guilt. He had lost his sons, and the woman he loved. One day, while wandering along the banks of the Ganga, he came across a young boy. The boy was handsome and strong, his eyes filled with wisdom beyond his years. Shantanu felt an instant connection with him. To his astonishment, he recognized the boy as his eighth son, the one Ganga had taken with her. This was Devavrata, a boy destined for greatness. Years passed and Devavrata grew into a skilled warrior, mastering the arts of combat and strategy. His prowess in archery and swordsmanship became legendary, and he was admired by all who witnessed his skills. Not only was he a formidable fighter, but he also possessed a keen intellect and a deep sense of duty towards his kingdom. Shantanu, his heart finally finding some solace, decided to find a wife for his son. He believed that a strong and wise queen would be the perfect companion for Devavrata. One day, while traveling through the forest, the king encountered a captivating fragrance that seemed to envelop the entire area. It was a scent so enchanting that it reminded him of the divine presence of Ganga, his first love. Intrigued and drawn by the familiar fragrance, Shantanu followed the scent deeper into the forest. To his astonishment, he came across a young woman named Satyavati, the daughter of a humble fisherman. Satyavati possessed an alluring charm and a beauty that seemed almost otherworldly. Her presence by the river, with the sunlight dancing on the water, created a picturesque scene that took the king's breath away. Shantanu, smitten by her beauty and grace, immediately felt a deep connection with Satyavati. He approached her and, with a heart full of hope, asked for her hand in marriage. The fisherman, though honored by the king's proposal, was hesitant. He knew that marrying his daughter to the king would elevate their status, but he also understood the complexities and traditions of the royal court. The fisherman, with a determined expression, explained his condition to the king. He wanted assurance that Satyavati's children would inherit the throne of Hastinapur. This was a bold demand, one that could potentially disrupt the line of succession and create turmoil within the kingdom. Shantanu was taken aback by the fisherman's demand. He knew that agreeing to this condition would mean altering the future of Hastinapur and possibly causing strife among his subjects. It was a significant moment, one that required careful contemplation. The king stood there weighing the consequences of his decision, knowing that whatever choice he made would change the fate of his kingdom forever. The fisherman, a shrewd man, was aware of the implications of marrying his daughter to the king. He knew that his grandson, Satyavati's son, would be the rightful heir to the throne. But with Devavrata, the valiant and righteous prince, already in line, the fisherman feared for his grandson's future. He put forth a condition. Satyavati would marry Shantanu only if her son inherited the throne, not Devavrata. Shantanu was torn. He desired Satyavati but could not betray his son, who was the very image of justice and righteousness. He refused the fisherman's demand and returned to the palace, his heart heavy with a new sorrow. Devavrata, learning of his father's sadness and the cause behind it, decided to intervene. He approached the fisherman and vowed that he would renounce his claim to the throne, ensuring that Satyavati's son would inherit the kingdom. The fisherman, astounded by the prince's selflessness, agreed to the marriage. But Devavrata's sacrifice went even further. To ensure that no future conflict would arise, he took a vow of celibacy, swearing never to marry or have children. Thus, he ensured that no descendants of his would ever challenge the claim of Satyavati's sons. From that day forward, he became known as Bhishma, he of the terrible oath. The kingdom rejoiced at Shantanu's marriage to Satyavati, unaware of the sacrifice their beloved prince had made. Peace and prosperity seemed assured, but the seeds of conflict had been sown. Bhishma's vow, while noble, created a precarious situation. The stage was set for a clash of ambitions, loyalties, and destinies. The Mahabharata, the great epic of war and dharma, was about to unfold.